Everyone needs compassion, love that's never failing. Let mercy fall on me.
Look at the different virtues that Peter challenges us with there in 2 Peter. And I got to tell you, at least for me, every week they get harder. You know, last week I thought, man, that's got to be the top, self-control. And then you start studying perseverance, or as I think Larry's King James Version said, patience. At the 1983 Australian Ultra Marathon, it's a race of 544 miles from Sydney to Melbourne. There was an odd competitor that showed up. Everyone else was, highly trained, commercially sponsored professionals. There was this 61-year-old farmer named Cliff Young. Now, others wore, all these professional running shoes and athletic gear. Cliff, now I want you to picture this, he shows up in a loose white shirt, flopping over baggy overalls, and had rubber galoshes over his boots and a white baseball cap. Sound like some of you going out to check your sprinklers, doesn't it? The officials, they laughed at him. They thought they were being set up for a joke. And there were some that even jeered and shouted insults at him, but he was serious to run. And when the starting gun fired, the runners took off. And again, the crowd's laughing at the contrast between these young contestants and Cliff. But 5 days later, 5 days, 15 hours, and 4 minutes, no one was laughing. Cliff Young crossed the Melbourne finish almost 10 hours, think about that, 10 hours ahead of the second place runner. And you wonder, how did this aging farmer wearing bib overalls and galoshes do this? There are two facts that kind of emerged. First, as a shepherd, he was too poor to own a horse, so Cliff often herded his entire flocks of sheep alone, sometimes running day and night to keep up with them. Secondly, he didn't realize that runners in ultra marathons stopped and rested at night. Now, think about this. This guy, he's my age, and I'm thinking, he ran the entire distance, 544 miles, without sleeping. I can't even run 544 feet. How about y'all, Randy?
Nope.
But Cliff had the attribute that we're going to talk about today: perseverance. That idea to just, whatever life throws at us, we keep going. That phrase literally means to bear up under. It describes someone who's just steadfast through whatever obstacles, and trials come their way. It's holding on through doubts and sorrows and disasters, and coming out on the other side of it with a faith that's stronger than before. We know it's that never give up attitude. It's a commitment that, we're going to move forward with the Lord even when everything else is trying to hold us back. Perseverance can turn an ordeal into an opportunity. Perseverance, one of the definitions from the Greek was this: that we don't care how heavy the load gets or how much pressure we are under, we're not going to budge an inch. In our world where most people nowadays just seem like they give up or give out, those who keep going are what the Lord wants. We know, all of us know, we're all old enough to understand trials and suffering, they're inescapable, they're part of life. But the good news is perseverance can transform those sufferings into blessings. And I mean, adding perseverance to our suffering, I think, has really more benefits than we realize. But I think two at least come to my mind, and I know there's several more. But number one, perseverance produces trust. Think about Job, who just never gave up. I mean, he kept his trust in God. I mean, and he perseveres through 40 chapters of suffering. Then remember in Job chapter 42, verse 12, he says, "Now the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than the beginning." In fact, it may be right here on your page if you're here in Peter, but look back a couple of pages to James chapter 5. And look at verse 11. James 5, verse 11. "We count those blessed who endured." Endured. They kept on. And we've heard of the endurance of Job and have seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings, that the Lord is full of compassion and is merciful. I mean, we know as we read Job's story, he struggled. I mean, he questioned, and at times, it's almost that he defiled God. But the flame of his faith never went out. He kept on. I mean, the one thing, all of his doubts and all of his questioning, where were they directed? To God. And God rewarded Job's perseverance, and we know at the end of his story, gave him a double blessing because he trusted in God. And Job learned that God is big enough to control all facets of the universe, and he's certainly able to direct the paths of our lives. Job 42 verse 2 says this. Job says, "I know that you," talking to God, "can do all things, and that no purpose of yours will be thwarted." I don't know why I never can say that word. My tongue doesn't do that. He learned to trust God. And we know, I don't know about you, but as I read Job's suffering, I mean, I think, most people would probably have lost hope, and yet he produces perseverance. Life, I want us to understand something here, and we know this, but life will press us. And it's either going to press us away from God, or it's going to press us closer to God. And whose choice is that? You tell me. It's ours. Perseverance is that willingness to wait on God, to apply His grace that we just sang about. I mean, grace among our frustrations and among our questioning. And as we wait, and as we wonder, and as we doubt, He tells us, you know what? Just press on. I want us to remember this little simple phrase today, if you don't remember anything else. There are times in life where I think we need to say this: I can't, God can, and I will let Him. I can't, God can, and I'll let Him. We keep going because we can't. He can, and we've decided we're going to let Him. Second thing, perseverance, I think, produces transformation. As we press forward in life, we know the lessons that we learn. I mean, the Bible teaches us, and we know these verses well, but turn to Romans chapter 5 for just a second. I mean, the Bible teaches us in Romans and in James that perseverance, I think, is the very heart of a mature person. You look at people, you think about it. I want you to think about for a minute the people that we know that are so mature godly. Why are they that way? Chances are they've gone through a lot in this life, and they've persevered. I mean, I look out right here and I see some of you that are godly people because of what you've persevered. You've kept going. Romans 5, 3 and 4, not only this, but we also exult in our tribulations, knowing that tribulation brings about, and here's our word for the day, perseverance. Perseverance, proving character. And proving character, hope. I mean, Paul's simply facing the facts of a Christian experience. Tribulation, it's part of life. And then we know these words from James chapter 1, verses 2 and 4. If you want to turn over there. And these are tough verses. When he says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when we encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance," perseverance. "And let that endurance, that perseverance, have its perfect result, so that you will be," notice what happens, "perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And we could spend all day on those verses right here. But one thing I want us to understand here, because I think, at least I was confused for years, because when I read that, "Consider it all joy," I'm just thinking, when I'm going through a bad time, I don't feel any joy. And maybe that's my weakness. I don't know. But you look at that word in the original language, consider, and you know what that means? It means to place value on. To place value on. It does not say, it does not say feel the joy. It says, what lesson can we consider? What lesson can we learn as we go through this valley of life? How can I be changed by God during this trial? We know spiritual transformation doesn't just happen. It's forged in the fires of difficulty. But when we maintain our trust in God, it produces, He promises us, doesn't He? He produces character. Character. God knows we need trials to, sorry about that, I'm one ahead there, I think, on those. We need trials to form character. I mean, athletes, you think the Olympics going on right now, what all did those folks have to go through to get there? They just didn't walk in one day and say, hey, I'm going to run the 100. They've spent their life enduring, preparing for it. So how do we find the strength to press on when we feel like we just want to give up? I want to mention 5 things real quickly, and I know we're almost out of time here, so I'll go through these in a hurry. 11:30 is always my deadline, so. Or y'all, that's what y'all said. I don't know. Maybe God has a different timetable, y'all think? I don't know.
We're going to persevere.
Persevere, there you go. Persevere. I'm glad you're listening, Randy. Number one, and turn to 2 Corinthians 4. Verse 16 and 17. We've got to put our problem in perspective. Therefore, from now, 2 Corinthians 4, sorry, I was reading the wrong verse, 16 and 17. Therefore, we do not lose heart. But though our outer man's decaying, and we all get that, our inner man's being renewed day by day. And then he makes this strange statement to us. Our momentary light affliction, it doesn't feel like light, does it? Is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. Comparison is the key word here, folks. Putting things in perspective. Paul said in Romans 8, verse 18, I consider the sufferings of this present time, they're not worthy to be compared with the glory that's to be revealed to us. Paul says there's really no comparison. Heaven will be worth whatever life does to us. I mean, I want us to, to me, the key words there are just beyond compare. And I want us to think, the best life that we have lived so far, the best life that you see out there of anyone, Paul says, you know what, you can't even compare that to heaven. And I don't know about you, but I think of that at times. And I think of it recently, since my dad passed away in August. I don't know how many times I have thought, I wonder what he's enjoying right now. That it's beyond compare. Beyond compare. Keep our perspective. Number 2, just tackle today. We know one day at a time. Jesus said in Matthew 6:33 and 34, don't worry about tomorrow because each day has enough trouble of its own, and that's so true. Number 3, and we talked about this in our class this morning that Eric led us in. Surround ourselves with encouragers. One another. That phrase one another is found almost 80 times in the New Testament. And we need one another in our corner, don't we? So many people, I want us to think about it, so many people are hanging by the thinnest of threads. Treat people well because we might be that thread. Number 4, cultivate positivity along the way. And that's one of the most difficult things when we're going through tough times. But when those opportunities come in life, when we're down in that valley, if we find time to laugh, to be happy, to embrace that moment, do that. Do that. And I understand sometimes the strength within us is not some big flame for all to see. Sometimes life hits us to the point where maybe we just have that tiny little spark. But that tiny little spark whispers so softly to us, keep going. Keep going. Keep your flame going. And the last one, just refuse to quit. Let me read one other verse here and we'll close. Hebrews 10, 35 and 36. Hebrews 10, 35 and 36. Do not throw away your confidence. Don't do it, folks. Which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, perseverance, so that when you've done the will of God, you may receive what was promised. 2 words stand out there to me, confidence and endurance. Let me just close with this. Did y'all remember as a kid, or maybe you bought for your kids, that big vinyl doll? Mine, I think, was a clown that had that heavy round weight of sand in the bottom, and you could punch it, and what would it do? Bounce back. And you'd punch it again, what would it do? Bounce back. Life punches and punches and punches us at times. But my challenge for all of us, keep getting up. You know what? When we feel like quitting, look at the cross. Look at the empty tomb. Look at the victory. Look at His grace. Meditate on Him. Talk to Him. Stay in God's Word. God's not going to give up on us. Don't give up on ourselves. If we have to reset, readjust, restart, refocus, redo, just do it as many times as we need to and persevere. I came across this week, and I'll close with this, and Randy, you can lead us in a song. It was a prayer, and it says this: Lord, tomorrow if I must struggle again with aching exhaustion, with twisting pain, until I'm utterly spent, then, Lord, give me the enabling grace to believe without feeling, to know without seeing, to hold your invisible hand, to wait with trust for the morning, and continue to praise you. Perseverance. Let's keep on keeping on.
Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save.